This podcast series is full of difficult and troubling content from the start and is not suitable for children.
Nurse Lucy Letby has been found guilty of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 6 others while they were in her care at a hospital in Cheshire, making the 33-year-old the UK's worst child killer in modern times.
Lucy Letby is one of Britain's deadliest criminals. She murdered 7 babies. Or did she?
She's been convicted of betraying the trust placed in her as a nurse looking after sick, premature, vulnerable newborn infants. Here's one of her accusers, consultant Dr. Ravi Jairam.
I don't think anybody has a rule book for how you deal with a situation where you're suspecting that somebody's causing deliberate harm to babies on your neonatal unit.
Lucy Letby poisoned some babies with insulin. She injected others with air. And she wrote notes confessing to her crimes. Or so they say. Lucy Letby is a monster, they say. Throw away the key, they say. But I, for one, believe she is no such thing. My name is John Sweeney, and the moment she was found guilty at the first trial, I put out a tweet questioning the verdict, writing, Lucy Letby may well be the victim of a miscarriage of justice. But the Crown has taken a cluster of accidental and natural deaths and pointed the finger at Letby. There is no compelling evidence of a single murder. The law sometimes gets it wrong.
And I'm Edward Abel Smith, an author who has recently investigated several claims of miscarriages of justice. Both John and I are fully aware of the agony that the mums and dads of the babies who died at the Countess of Chester Hospital have been going through. But we simply don't believe that locking up someone for life on the basis of bad evidence can ever be justified.
Welcome to our podcast series, Was There Ever a Crime? The Trials of Lucy Letby. Episode 1, A Hospital Full of Shit.
Before we start getting into the heavy stuff, the Countess of Chester Hospital is named after the woman who opened it 40 years ago, Diana, Princess of Wales. The Prince of Wales is also the Earl of Chester, his missus, the Countess.
In case you're wondering, this trip down Royal Memory Lane has a point. The new hospital was built on the site of a 19th century mental hospital and over the decades vastly extended. The neonatal unit was built in the late 60s and the sewage pipes were made of cast iron and are now more than half a century old. They would rust and crack and create blockages, and so the sinks and taps in the unit would be polluted with foul water. Bacteria in sewage can kill adults, let alone sick babies.
But the Crown was not interested in any of that. The first piece of evidence that it said damned Lucy Letby was a simple spreadsheet. On the vertical axis are a series of suspicious events, including the deaths of 7 babies between June 2015 and July 2016. On the horizontal axis are the names of 38 nurses who worked on the neonatal unit. There is an X indicating when each nurse was on duty for each death. For Lucy Letby, there is a big fat X, a yes, she was there, X after X after X, against every single suspicious event. The Lucy did it spreadsheet could not be a coincidence. She must be the killer.
But in the critical time frame between June 2015 and July 2016, not 7, but the Crown's chief witness found 17 babies died. The other dead babies matter. You can't just look at the 7 deaths Lucy Letby was found guilty of killing. That's like painting the target around the arrow after you've taken the shot. But let's go with the Crown's case for a moment. Why did the babies that Lucy didn't kill die? Well, one possible reason that has never been properly investigated was the bacteria from sewage in the sinks. But there were more.
The neonatal unit normally saw 2 or 3 babies die each year. But in the 13 months from June 2015, there were 17. When managers at the Countess of Chester Hospital grew concerned by the spike in baby deaths, They didn't call the cops. Instead, they asked senior doctors from the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health to report on the cause of a cluster of baby deaths.
The Royal College's November 2016 report found that the neonatal unit was badly run, poorly staffed by nurses and doctors, and the environment was below standard. When we decided to do this podcast, the first thing Ed and I did was to go and see the hospital for ourselves. Who are you and why have you kidnapped us?
Okay, so my name's Michelle Warden. I was the advanced neonatal nurse practitioner on the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital for over 20 years. And I'm going to take you down to the hospital, show you where it is, show you where the neonatal unit is. I was served compulsory redundancy in 2007 under a cost-cutting stroke downgrading of the neonatal unit.
So you never worked with Lucy?
I never worked with Lucy. Lucy came in 2012, newly qualified, straight out of Chester University.
By the way, just before we move on, you weren't. This is kosher. You weren't fired for being on the drink.
No, I was not fired for being. I can show you my documents where I was served compulsory.
Michelle was one of the 8 senior nurses who was got rid of from a neonatal unit several years before the big spike in unexplained deaths.
Okay, so we're coming up to the Countess of Chester.
This building here is what's called the Longhouse, and that's where the paediatric clinics and the consultant paediatricians and their secretaries hang out.
Yeah.
At the back of that is the paediatric ward, and this is the Women and Children's Hospital, which was built in the 1970s. 2 floors, covers labour ward, all maternity, gynecology and paediatrics, including neonates. And at the back of that building is the original old neonatal unit where I worked and where Lucy worked.
The neonatal unit where Lucy Letby worked is a drab building dating back to the late 60s. The ceilings are low, the daylight from outside is restricted, so it's a gloomy place. John and I had a walk around.
So, classically, kind of 1970s, 1980s municipal hospital feel, and there isn't that much natural light. There's slightly foreboding.
Yeah, it is.
There's a bit of a garden surrounded by stuff. A young couple. Mum looks very heavily pregnant, and they look worried, and I just feel, I've been there, and I'm worried, and good luck. So we're not looking at a state-of-the-art unit. We're looking at somewhere which is run down and a bit rubbish. There were 20 cots in the unit, according to the report by the Royal College, which commented, quote, "Lighting is inadequate. The rooms are small, with cots placed too close together," unquote. Common sense says that if one baby has a bug, it could infect others. But that is not the end of the environmental problems at the neonatal unit by a long chalk.
So there was always problems with the sink. They would be blocked.
The water wouldn't go down?
Yeah, they would just block sinks. The water wouldn't go down. And then you'd have to call a plumber, and the plumber would come out and weave his magic and unblock it. There was, at one point, there was an outbreak of tiny little black insects at the nurses' station. I think they were in the intensive care part of the roof as well. So we had to get an exterminator in. It was built in the 70s, but it was built with crumbling concrete. It's a flat roof, which the flat roof would leak. Bad design. And
the other thing is that actually it's a small hospital which becomes a much bigger hospital over time, yeah? So is there a problem in that the sewage system isn't big enough for the job it now has by the time we get to Lucy's time?
I couldn't answer that.
You're not a plumber, are you?
I'm not a plumber, and I'm not a builder.
Michelle is not a plumber, but Lorenzo Mansuti is. He worked at the Countess of Chester Hospital from 1986 and was the only witness for the defence called in Lucy's murder trials. Yes, that's right, the only defence witness at the trial. Ed will play Ben Myers, Lucy's defence barrister. I will act out the plumber's words.
Which area of the Countess of Chester Hospital were you looking at?
I think this is the Women and Children's building.
Does that include the neonatal unit?
It does, yes.
So how up to date was that at the time we're looking at, back in 2015 to 2016?
I believe it was originally built in the late 60s, opened in the 1970s, so there'd been some improvement works over that time.
Were there any particular issues with the pipe work which was in place?
Yes, there was issues with the drainage system.
What sort of problems emerged that you had to deal with?
Sort of various blockages, times where the cast iron would crack. It was all cast iron pipe, and the cast iron would crack due to a number of reasons: expansion, contraction, or just age, I think.
Just to help us, if there's a pipe in a system like this and it blocks, what can happen to the water or sewage that would otherwise be going down that pipe?
It comes up the next lowest point, really.
Right. And where would it come up through? What sort of places do you find?
It could come up through toilets or a wash-hand basin, anywhere where there's an open outlet, really.
Did that happen from time to time? There's been a blockage and then...
Yes.
And sewage or water might come up through another unit somewhere?
Yes.
Did you get leaks there ever?
There were occasionally, yes.
If there was an incident with sanitation like that, what would you or your staff be called upon to do?
Normally a call would come through to the help desk, and the nature of where it was, we'd sort of attend immediately to try and rectify the issues as quickly as possible.
And how often were you called to deal with these sort of issues?
Through the whole building, it was more weekly, I guess.
The jury heard about one event in some detail.
The drainage system had backed up, and the wash-hand basin, which is in Nursery 1...
We'll take it step by step. Nursery 1, in which part of the hospital?
The neonatal.
The neonatal unit, okay. So something had backed up in the pipe?
Yes, it had backed up the wash-hand basin, and that's when we got the department got the call to...
What happened with the wash-hand basin? What came out of it?
I guess it was foul water out of the drain.
And someone who isn't engaged in your line of work, foul water might mean water that isn't very nice, but you actually mean something by foul water, don't you?
Foul is a generic term of what goes down toilets and wash-hand basins and so forth.
It could be human waste?
Yes.
Sewage?
Yes.
So foul water backed up. And where did it come out in Nursery 1?
I believe it came out of the wash-hand basin.
In the neonatal unit?
Yes.
Sewage in the sinks in the neonatal unit and the maternity unit, or central labour suite, the CLS, close by, was a hazard that never went away.
Mark might, but the babies were born in the maternity unit, and if they were premature or sickly, they went straight to the neonatal unit. So the traffic between the two units means that the danger of cross-infection was extraordinarily high.
When the sewage hit, the nurses and doctors called in the hospital plumbers, who logged reports. Here's a series of extracts from those reports.
July the 4th, 2015, flood on maternity wing in the Central Labour Suite, Ward 35.
August the 8th, 2015, a flood in Ward 35.
October the 2nd, 2015, blocked drains in the Central Labour Suite.
October the 6th, 2015, maintenance called to investigate flood in neonatal unit.
January 26, 2016, a leak in the neonatal unit.
January the 27th, 2016, the nursery was noted to be flooded again at approximately 4:30 a.m, with the floor almost completely flooded again.
February the 24th, 2016, a burst pipe in sluice in Ward 35.
March the 18th, 2016, blocked sinks in the neonatal unit, nursery room 2, and the kitchen.
April the 10th, 2016, in Ward 35, Central Labour Suite, the sluice master and drains blocked.
June the 6th, 2016, a flood in the courtyard of the neonatal unit.
July the 5th, 2016, in Ward 35, Central Labour Suite, for various plumbing jobs in the neonatal unit. In plain English, the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital was, on a regular basis, full of shit. Along with the plumber, Lucy Letby gave evidence in her own defence. This is what she told the court about the sewage problem in Nursery 1, an intensive care suite in the neonatal unit. Her words are voiced by an actor. This is what she said about Nursery 1.
We used to have raw sewage coming out of the sinks and coming out on the floor in Nursery 1.
Challenged about the significance of a sewage in the sink, she said,
"It's an important thing to know there were often plumbing issues. It's a contributory issue if the unit is dirty and staff were unable to wash their hands."
Lucy Letby told the court that plumbers were often called into Nursery 1, the room for the most vulnerable babies, to deal with backflow into the sinks.
"That's not a safe working environment. I'm not sure what impact that could have on a poorly baby."
What are the likely consequences of the presence of sewage in a unit where very sick and premature babies are being treated? We put this to Dr. Roger Norridge, a retired paediatrician who worked with neonatal babies. We asked him, how often has he come across raw sewage?
So from all the hospitals that you worked in, how often would there be kind of sewage leaks in your hospitals?
Personally, I've never seen it.
It's very unusual to have a regular sewage leak in a neonatal intensive care unit.
It would be absolutely extraordinary.
After studying the evidence on sewage flooding, Dr. Norridge has grave concerns about standards at the time of the Countess of Chester neonatal unit.
In that particular unit, I think they were treating babies around 2.5 pounds.
And so 9 pounds, that was a healthy baby, as my daughter was, very fortunately. But these babies are pretty much nearly a quarter.
They're very tiny.
Of the weight. They're very tiny.
What are the health consequences of a baby being born preterm, before the normal end of pregnancy?
The more immature they are, the more likely they are to have problems in the future, particularly with neurological and respiratory problems.
So breathing?
Yes.
So some of the babies that we're looking at in the story had to be fed with oxygen.
They needed oxygen.
That's common for a neonatal unit.
Yes. You're monitoring their oxygen levels. You're having to feed them in different ways depending on the problems that the babies have got. This is a complex situation. It's not, routinely feeding a tiny human being. It's dealing with a premature baby that has got, deficient immune systems and digestive systems. It was really undesirable that certain babies should have been looked after in that environment.
After Lucy Letby was convicted, the government set up an inquiry into the tragedy and appointed Lady Justice Thirlwall to head it. She said the convictions against Lucy Letby stand, so that's that.
But the law of unintended consequences has kicked in. Time and again, inquiry witnesses have given evidence that points in the opposite direction of a neonatal unit that was in a hell of a state. One witness to the Thirlwall inquiry in September 2024 was the father of triplets, 2 of whom died, he believes, murdered by Lucy Letby. These are his words from his statement to the inquiry. It struck me how it was cold-looking and dingy. The state of the theatres looked like something out of a horror film. It was very cold and unhygienic. The first incision caused a big spray of blood to go across the room. A small amount landed on her head. This left me feeling nervous. It was a huge relief to see them come out safely.
On the 23rd of June 2016, just 2 days after his birth, one of the triplets, Child O, suffered an unexpected collapse and died. The mother said in her statement, "We were confronted by a scene of complete chaos. It was complete madness. Nurses were running round left, right, grabbing medicines and IVs. It was clear Child O's collapse was a complete shock to them."
The next day, another of the triplets, Child P, also suffered an unexpected collapse. The mum continued,
"As soon as I got to the unit, I was confronted with the same chaos as the day before. As soon as they managed to stabilise Child P and he was improving, he would deteriorate again. He was being pumped with drugs and resuscitated over and over again."
The baby's father described the scenes of Child P's death as absolute pandemonium, with doctors and nurses looking up what to do next on the internet. "I saw a nurse Googling a procedure. The procedure was a lung drain. There was an image of a person with an arrow where the incision should be. I was angry at this point. I remember other staff coming over to the computer to have a look at it. They all had a look at it and did the procedure. It looked like they were following a tutorial rather than they actually knew what they were doing. The parents insisted that their remaining baby be taken to Liverpool Women's Hospital. According to them, that was as clean as the Countess of Chester was dirty. Here's the mother again.
We noticed a different level of cleanliness. There were clear hygiene protocols. We were told to wash our hands before entering the unit, and again when we went in the room. The mother and father lost 2 of their 3 triplets in July 2016. The hygiene problems at the unit, first noted in May 2015, had lasted longer than a year. So, John, what have you got here?
Well, I've just been given a confidential document by a source. It's a high-risk report, originally from, I think, the Hospital Maintenance Department. And it points to a major health problem at the Countess of Chester neonatal unit back in early 2015.
Okay.
So the high-risk report was first logged on the 20th of May 2015. And it reads, I'm going to quote it here, quotes, "The tap in nursery 1, that's in the neonatal unit, was replaced. And I was informed that the specimen was sent to be tested. I was informed at a later date that this tap had grown Pseudomonas."
What's Pseudomonas?
I Googled it. Pseudomonas can kill. It's a potentially lethal bacteria that can't be treated by penicillin. At the very top of the list of things it can do is to cause pneumonia, lung infections and the like.
But the Pseudomonas was only found in one of the taps?
No. The report reads, quotes, "The rest of the taps on the unit have also been tested. The tap in nursery 3 came back positive to Pseudomonas, and estates need to replace the tap there too. However, due to capacity, this is not possible." End quote. So there was a killer bug in 2 taps, that means 2 sinks in the neonatal unit. But because of lack of capacity, that means lack of money, they did not fix it. So the bacteria stayed in the tap.
And when did you say the report was written?
May 2015.
Wait, hold on. So baby A, so that's the first baby Letby is accused of murdering, was born at the start of June 2015. So shortly after a deadly bacteria is found in the neonatal unit, it just so happens to be the start of Lucy Letby's killing spree.
Well, there's another funny, peculiar coincidence too. This report, it was kept secret for a long time. It's something that the jurors never got to hear about, and that's not good.
Pseudomonas is normally found in sewage and can cause infection, which in turn can lead to sepsis. That's when the body's immune system goes into overkill, and that can be deadly. Infants at the most risk fall into 3 categories. 1, if they are born prematurely before 37 weeks of gestation. 2, if they have a prolonged hospital stay, especially if they are on ventilators. And 3, if they undergo invasive procedures, such as catheters and breathing tubes.
Premature babies, tick. Staying in hospital on a ventilator, tick. Kept alive by tubes, tick. Sick babies at the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital were in peril from killer bacteria, including Pseudomonas.
In the leak report, there are 12 suggestions on how to control the impact of the outbreak of Pseudomonas. These include, and I quote, limiting access to the neonatal unit with only 2 visitors per baby, and strict hand washing at all times, treating all babies as if they had a severe infection.
You don't impose those measures without a reason. True, the jury did hear from Lorenzo the plumber that there were sewage problems at least once a week. But the jurors were never told that there had been a report marked as high risk, alerting staff to a bacteria outbreak on the ward, which exposed sick babies to Pseudomonas. By the way, this report was flagged to one of the hospital's risk management units and its divisional board, but not down the track, the jury.
There's one more thing we'd like you to hear. Sian Evans is a mother whose baby Jacob was born at the Countess of Chester neonatal unit on the 6th of June 2015, just after the high-risk report about the killer bacteria was written. Her words are read by an actress.
I was at home, and then suddenly, without warning or any pain, my waters broke. Then the contractions started. There was just enough time to give me one steroid injection to try and help my baby's lungs before Jacob was born in the early hours of Saturday morning. I was able to hold him for a couple of minutes before he was taken to the neonatal unit. It was quite distressing to see him like that, with tubes and monitors everywhere. Jacob was able to move out of the intensive care nursery. Then, unexpectedly, at 8 days old, he became very poorly with septicemia, and his arms, leg and tummy all swelled up.
Sepsis or septicemia can kill. It arises when the body's defence mechanisms against infection go over the top, damaging vital organs such as lungs. Sian Evans was speaking to the Chester Standard in 2015. Baby Jacob was born on the 6th of June, diagnosed with sepsis on the 14th of June, and very sick, sent to another hospital, where he recovered, returned to the Countess of Chester, and then immediately developed sepsis again. Fortunately, he recovered.
Lucy Letby's first supposed victim, baby A, died on the 8th of June 2015, 2 days after baby Jacob was born. Baby C, Letby's second supposed murder victim, died on the same day Jacob was diagnosed with sepsis. Then baby D, Letby's third supposed murder victim, died on the 22nd of June.
The 3 deceased babies John has mentioned all had medical notes indicating they might have also been suffering with sepsis, like Jacob. Baby A's notes show he was being given medication for sepsis before he died. Baby C had the words "suspected sepsis" written by hand on his notes under the problems section. And baby D's post-mortem identified pneumonia as a cause of death. If sepsis gets to the lungs, it can cause pneumonia.
We are not saying that the Pseudomonas definitely killed the babies. Rather, it is proof that the neonatal unit was dangerously unhygienic. Mark that the plumbers were tackling outbreaks of raw sewage in the pipes, taps and sinks of the neonatal unit on a regular basis. It's pound to a penny that Pseudomonas wasn't the only bacteria in the unit. It's the only one that was reported. So, let's set out an alternative hypothesis to Lucy Letby serial killer. In May 2015, the neonatal unit maintenance people log a killer bacteria in 2 taps in 2 separate sinks. In June, the chronic sewage problem unfixed, 4 babies develop sepsis. 1, baby Jacob, gets sepsis twice but survives. 3 die. So this is our hypothesis. There isn't a serial killer. There is killer bacteria.
We asked Cheshire Police whether they considered the sewage in the sinks before deciding on foul play, and other questions too. Cheshire Police told us, as a result of 2 trials, Lucy Letby was sentenced to 15 whole life orders in prison. The appeal court has rejected Lucy Letby's appeal on the first trial, and an appeal on the second trial has been lodged. There are currently 2 active investigations that are continuing. In addition to this, there is an independent statutory public inquiry with oral evidence ongoing. In light of the ongoing investigations and current active legal proceedings, we will not be commenting any further on this case.
The Crown Prosecution Service told us 2 juries and 3 appeal court judges have reviewed a multitude of different strands of evidence against Lucy Letby. She's been convicted on 15 separate counts following 2 separate jury trials. In May, the Court of Appeal dismissed Letby's leave to appeal on all grounds, rejecting her argument that expert prosecution evidence was flawed. The CPS advised that it would be inappropriate to comment further while the Thirlwall inquiry is ongoing.
We asked the Countess of Chester Hospital to comment on the Pseudomonas in the neonatal unit, the wider hygiene issues we raised here, and other general points. They told us, due to the Thirlwall inquiry and the ongoing police investigations, it would not be appropriate to answer or provide advice on the questions asked at this time.
Not only did the Countess of Chester Hospital know about the Pseudomonas outbreak on the neonatal ward, they were also criticised 2 years later for being the 5th worst performing hospital in the whole of NHS England when it came to treating sepsis in a timely manner.
The investigation found that only 33% of a hospital's patients who needed treatment for sepsis were given antibiotics within the appropriate timeframe. So, for example, baby D died in June 2015. We know from the notes sepsis was suspected 12 minutes after birth, yet antibiotics were only administered nearly 4 hours later. True, the jury were told about the sewage by Letby herself and by the plumber.
But the jury was not told that at least one killer bacteria had been found in the unit. Did they fully understand the impact that could have on premature babies?
After the third baby died in June 2015, the finger was pointed by the consultants at Lucy Letby, the serial killer. She must have done it. But had the jury heard everything we've investigated in this episode, would they have concluded murder beyond reasonable doubt?
Or perhaps the jury would have weighed the possibility that these babies had died from infection. After all, they were being cared for in a hospital full of shit. So the jury did not begin to know the whole story, and that means many people now think Lucy Letby did not get a fair trial. But the idea that the Countess of Chester neonatal unit was a safe place for sick babies, well, that's for the fairies.
As we've heard, an inquiry into the deaths at the hospital is being held by Lady Justice Thirlwall. Once again, she stated at the outset that the convictions against Lucy Letby stand.
If the judge is right, we are wasting your time. If we are right, her inquiry is a waste of public money. Watch out for our next episode, The Deluded, where we look at the doctors who pointed the finger at Lucy Letby in the first place. We're crowdfunding this podcast to pay for its production costs. If you're able to support us, the link to the crowdfunder is on our social media feed.
We are investigating and reporting this podcast in real time. Therefore, if you have any information you think could be useful to us, please email us on lucyletby@gmail.com. Also, if you have any questions you want answered, please let us know and we will try to cover them in a future episode.
Was there ever a crime? The Trials of Lucy Letby was investigated, presented and produced by me, John Sweeney, and Edward Abel Smith. This is a Chalk and Blade production, co-produced by Jason Phipps and Ruth Barnes. Mix and engineering by Ross Ramsey Golding. Additional editing by Matt Nielsen. Legal services were provided by Sarah Vandor Mackay. Special thanks to Cleo C. de Oliveira for her help in researching this episode. Thanks to the BBC and ITV for the archive audio which was used in this episode.